Good to see you again. Uh, if you like what you're seeing, hit like, share it with other people. Uh, I wanted to talk about uh, the uh, the way the pendulum swings back and forth, uh, and we see this going on in our society today. That the pendulum is swinging. It has swung one way very far, and now it's swinging back the other way. People can only take so much. And then, they say, wait, wait, and they start reining in things. Well, uh, you've we talk about this process a lot as the Hegelian dialectic. So, or we at least the Hegelian dialectic sort of addresses this back and forth that happens. Uh, and you know the Hegelian dialectic as you have a thesis, and then you have an antithesis, and then you have a synthesis. Now, we see this, our society tends to see this as a great thing. We see it used all the time. Uh, so I think we're manipulated very much by this. People who consciously are using this concept because they're saying, okay, if we can push something far enough or provide, it's even used, in business negotiations, right? Let's go into the negotiation and we'll ask for, $100 million, and they'll say, no, we only want to give you $50 million, and we'll meet in the middle at $175 million. That's all great. That's the way the world works. So the Hegelian dialectic is sort of the a philosophical aspect of this, about how philosophies work, worldviews work. Life hasn't always worked that way. There's a lot of times where one civilization or one culture just comes in and wipes out the other culture. There's no pendulum getting swung there. It's just getting wiped out. This is what Islam wants to do. This is their idea. This is out of their own mouth. I'm not saying anything that isn't right out of their own teachings. You either are Islamic or you're not. Now, in the case of if you were a Muslim and you decided to leave Islam, then you will hear many Muslims say, well, then you should die. Okay? I'm not saying that that happens all the time, but occasionally it does. And I just saw something the other day where a non-Muslim person was having a debate with a Muslim imam, and he kept pressing him about, what do you do with the guy who leaves Islam? Should he live or should he die? And the guy said he should die. So that might be sort of hard to do in the United States. That might be why we don't see it. If we were in a Middle Eastern country, that might be doing something else might be happening. But we're not there, so who knows? Anyway, my point simply is, so sometimes you have cultures that say, we have to wipe you out. And of course, this is sort of the argument that we've heard, at least my entire life, about how the Europeans came into the New World and wiped out the Indians, and we were evil because we did it. Of course, if you really study your history, you know that we had multiple cultures, and some of the recent biological DNA evidence shows that we've had multiple waves of people coming into this North America and South America and wiping out people in front of who were already existing, or pushing them around, one or the other. When you have a lot of room, you may not have to actually wipe somebody else. You can just push them around. And then, of course, that happened to Europe with the Huns, etc., like that, things like that. So that can happen, but we have this polite thing that we do. When Hegel came out with the Hegelian dialectic, that you got one idea, and then you have another idea, and then we just come to the middle, and we have everybody is going to be happy. We're going to have a synthesis. Um, you know, to revisit history a little bit, you had Francis Bacon, who today people think that science is anti-religion, whereas Francis Bacon wasn't anti-religion. In fact, he saw atheism. Let's see if I can see what I've got over here. He said that that they that deny a God destroy man's nobility, for certainly man is of kin to the beast by his body. So we're natural beings. And if he be not of kin to God by his spirit, he is a base and a noble creature. So it's a good thing from Bacon's point of view that we are akin to God by our spirit. He considered that science was a remedy against superstition. Now, what's happened is we got people who, I'm sorry, trying to take out a bug there. We got people who today, vast segments of society, vast segments of people in your churches who believe that, well, we shouldn't have a Christian faith in the way that it's presented biblically, because that's just superstition. There's so much superstition there, and the scriptures are just full of superstition. They assume that you have this non-fact based, non-historical based scripture, and so you can sort of do with it what you want to, because you're more enlightened than the people who came 2,000 years ago and wrote those scriptures. So we have people who we've been taught the natural process. This swinging of the pendulum is just a natural process. But for Bacon, the scientific method is not about all these theories. Today, I just listened to a guy last night talking about, it's very interesting, there are these spherical, they're called Carolina spheres or something like that. But you can see them from the air, these actual ovals. No, not spheres, they're ovals. They're ovals. They're all over, up and down the eastern, all through the Carolinas, Georgia, and other parts of the United States. And so the question is, how were these things made? And this guy was going into all the theory. Well, I think it's from the, what's that? The little, what is it? The little, happened 12,000 years ago. If you know about it, you know about it. That's the theory. That this happened, this sort of catastrophic event happened 12,000 years ago, and that affected the world. And so it must be from this, or maybe. And he was given theories, but some of them you could tell he was stating them as fact. Well, he has no fact. He's done his research. He talked about different research they had done that had proved nothing in any particular way of things that they were looking at. Maybe it was meteors. Maybe they were looking at different things. He still didn't have the answer. All he has is theories, but he talked about it as if it was real. Well, we do this all the time. You constantly, your teachers, your textbooks, your people on TV who talk to you. They talk to you like it's all real, but it's not proven. It is not anything within the Bacon's scientific method, and this is where the scientific method came from, was Bacon. But people don't really use the scientific method. They have their own little theories, their own worldviews, their own dreams that it's aliens. It's planets collided. There were meteors, whatever their thing is, whatever they're into. It's ET or it's aliens from Mars, right? Who knows? My point is, they're just accepting these notions as if they're reality. And they're not always true about it. Now, where does this come from? So Bacon, he's back when, in the 1700s, he comes up with this idea. He's not anti-Christian, but he is presenting an idea about this is the way we need to see the world. And he doesn't limit it to just scientific, natural studies. He limits this as a philosophical way of seeing the world for kings and everything. And this is the way that humanity is to reign the world, etc. So have dominion. And for him, we've lost dominion, and we need to get it back because we were supposed to have it. So anyway, that's the inference I get from him. But while he said that atheism was sort of handy in that it stripped away superstition. It looked at the world without any superstition. He was not an atheist. He just saw that if you don't have a particular religion, and think about this, we've got multiple world religions. You got, even in Europe, you had Catholicism at the time and Protestantism. Well, if you set those two things aside for Bacon, what do you have? Let's look at, not that you shouldn't have a God, but let's just set that all aside and don't let that dictate the way we see the world. Let's look at what is actually there. This was a new thesis. All right. Before you had people basically saying, well, the Bible says so and so, and therefore this is the way things are, and he's saying no. So he's taken us from one thesis to and his is an antithesis at that point, and then where do we go from there? So you have like in the mid 1800s, then you had spiritualism. Now this is another totally different kind of worldview. It's spiritualism. So it's sort of, let's swing back the other way. People are starting to think scientifically, but let's swing back the other way and have some spiritualism. This is with Helena Blavatsky. And you can look her up and learn all about her. Okay? Back in the mid 1800s. Big influence. This spiritualism started happening all over. This is all mixed in with the Second Great Awakening and stuff like that. Okay, so there were people looking for spiritual truth, and we get all these new Protestant cults. The Christian Scientists, Seventh-day Adventists, the Mormons, etc. For example. So there's, and they weren't alone necessarily. There were multiple other what we consider normal mainstream kind of Protestant churches that popped up as Methodists split off from Methodists and Baptists split off from Baptists for this reason or the other, right? So etc. So once again, pendulum swinging as people were seeing the world one way and then saying, that's not quite working for me. It's not answering my personal concerns and issues. What's going on? Why did so and so happen to my uncle or my child or whatever, right? My parent, so or me myself. So I don't like how that happened. So let me reevaluate who God is. And here's these spiritualist ideas getting mixed in with it. As well as some just made up stuff that came out of different places. I like the side of a mountain somewhere. Then we've got 1889. You had the World Parliament of Religions that happened along with about the Chicago World Exposition, World's Fair in Chicago back in that time. And some folks got together and had this parliament of religions with all kind of faiths, Baha'i, Hindu, etc., and sort of out of the norm, some new Christian ideas, some the Swedenborgians, Swedenborgians. I think Swedenborg was the guy. Anyway. And out of that, you have this guy, this Swami Vivekan, Vivekananda, Vivekananda, Vivekananda. He became a hugely popular person, and they had him travel all over the United States. And well, here we got people who are seeking. They're over here right now, but oh, they go and listen to the Swami, and oh, what wonderful ideas, and then things start swinging a different way, at least for portions of society. Now, and that's sort of the way it goes. Is these changes can happen, these swinging of the pendulum can happen just in an area, in a sect, and maybe it's happening with college-educated people. Maybe it's happening with the wealthy people. Maybe it's happening with the poor. But these things are happening in certain communities. And so the pendulum will swing for certain communities, I think. That's my opinion. And then it gains strength as time goes by, or it dies. Some things die. But the point is, you get a new notion. You have a new antithesis. So poor people get they have a particular worldview. They get a new idea. Then that doesn't quite work for them. You're not ready to be a Hindu. What do? You come find somewhere in the middle, right? And mixing in with all of this, you have the Theosophical Society, which was Helena Blavatsky. So her teachings influenced people who came after her. So you got Blavatsky, you've got Vivekananda, and then you find people like Alice Bailey and Aleister Crowley. And this is where our Luciferians, our modern day Satanists, sort of come out of this. That to be a Luciferian or a modern day Satanist, I won't call them Luciferians. I think we may have a mixture of those kind of things. May not be the same thing as someone who worship Baal. And so it's quite possible, I see people talking about this from time to time, that there are Baal worshippers, okay? And if you go back to ancient Canaan, Baal, the sacrifice of children, etc., there's people who are supposedly Baal worshippers, okay? And many of these people maybe they are Luciferians in that sense. So you have people who are the Church of Satan, and then you have people who are, which is a more less formalized religion kind of thing, and then you have the Luciferians who follow a particular worldview that might have been passed down for ages through their families and etc. It's occultism is what it is. Now, so anyway, you get these ideas. That's one way that things went, was that you started getting these Luciferian Satanist kind of folks in and around you, in and around society. And then you have things like the emergent church, which what is that? Here, I'll read what the emergent church is. This is from gotquestions.org. Another area where the emergent church movement has become anti-biblical is its focus on ecumenism. Ecumenism, whatever. Unity among people coming from different religious backgrounds and diversity in the expression of corporate worship are strong focuses of the emergent church movement. Being ecumenical means that compromise is taking place, and this results in a watering down of Scripture in favor of not offending an apostate. This is in direct opposition to passages such as Revelation 2:14-17, Jesus' letter to the church of Pergamum, in which the church is warned against tolerating those who teach false doctrine. So, this is the pendulum has swung. We started out, when I was young, I grew up reading Guidepost by Norman Vincent Peale. So a lot of stuff is psychological support. That's what the churches have become, a place of psychological support. Let's accept everybody. We don't want to offend anybody. Make everybody feel good. And of course, people, I've sat in Sunday school classes and people say, well, if that's what's in the Bible, that's not my God. I'll go to another church. uh, and so that's what has happened. Everybody's decided, hey, that's not my God. They went somewhere else. Okay. And we have the NAR, NRA, New Reformation, which is, very much, once again, thesis, antithesis. It's sort of taken a lot of this spiritualist stuff and melding it with Christianity and coming up with a new thing that isn't biblical Christianity. So anyway, I talked a lot about Christianity, but really what got me thinking about this was just looking at where things are today. I've lived now over 6 decades. I've lived 6 decades of being able to actually see and understand, right? Besides being a little baby. And we see technology that makes our life easier and things like that. But I just watched. I watched stuff on TV. Saw 2 things yesterday. One was where there was a fight between a guy who up in Cincinnati who used a racial slur, and he shouldn't have. And the response to that racial slur was brutal and inhumane. Okay, if you call somebody a name that they don't appreciate, you might get slugged in the face, and you may well deserve it. You shouldn't talk to people that way, okay? I'm not saying it's right to slug somebody in the face, but don't be surprised if you get slugged in the face for saying something that is going to be offensive. On the other hand, the response was brutal and uncalled for, and there were people who were not even involved or not directly involved who got hurt. It was brutal. That was one thing. Just where's society today? Where are we in society today? People just looking for a fight, and another was I watched Officer Tatum, and he was pointing. He's a black guy, and he was just pointing. He did a video on he's saying, where was BLM for this situation? And there was a situation where 6 or 8 black guys brutalized, raped, and hung a young woman. And it was hardly on the news. Now, and he was pointing out that if this had been a white guy or a white guys that had done that black girl, it'd been all over the news. And he's right, it would have. But I don't care about. I mean, that may be true, and frankly, yeah, somebody should be doing something to stand up for this girl's, in some way. But and it shouldn't have happened. Well, and that's the point. Yeah, he was pointing out. His argument was just about in the black community. Look what you're doing to yourselves. But my point is, man, how can somebody do that? Now, I admit my problem is now not with Officer Tatum. He does all kind of things. I've watched him for several years on and off it, on different videos. But I have recently been doing videos where looking at videos later in the evening about things that crimes that were committed and how they were solved and things like that. But it's one thing when you have one lone psychopath. It's another when you have a whole pack. That it's just crazy. Anyway, how did we get here? Did our cell phones help us to get any better? To me, we keep looking at technology. Look, I got roads out here, and there's 3 lanes. 3 lanes. That just makes it all the easier for a jerk to cut you off in that traffic. So thank you, technology. We got faster cars, we got more people on the road, etc. Right? Um, how do we get here? The pendulum has swung, and in some respects, it's swinging back. But here's the point that I'm really trying to make, my overall point, and that is, when we swing back, we don't get back to where we were. If it's one thing to say things were bad 60 years ago. Yes, things needed to change in certain ways 60 years ago. But when the pendulum swings, and it swings, and it swings, we get so far away from, we throw out the baby with the bathwater, is what we do. And the whole thing, everything gets thrown out, and the pendulum swings, and we finally come to a place where we can't tolerate the change that's being pushed upon us. And it hasn't been pushed on, whether it's one entity that's pushing it, if it's Satan pushing it on you, whether it's one entity, one person, a social group, a business group, a political group, a governmental group, whatever it is, whoever it is that's pushing that pendulum, when it comes back, it doesn't go back and regain the baby. The baby got thrown out with the bathwater. And so we're left with something new, or maybe an arm or a leg left over. We don't have the whole baby anymore. We don't have what was the other good parts. Not to the same degree. This is the way it is. So, for all of us folks who grew up with a notion that that evolution is true and good, and that we have evolved past the humanity of the past, the Neanderthals, the barbarians, the ignoramuses of the past. No, we haven't evolved anywhere. We just keep swinging in this pendulum. We're just on this pendulum, swinging back and forth, and it's sort of like when it gets out here, we throw something off as it goes. It's sort of like it's soaked, stuck in some kind of gravy or something, and you're swinging it back and forth, and you get some of the gravy gets slung over there, and then some of it gets slung over here, and we come back to the middle, and we're still the same old gravy. I don't know if that's a good metaphor or good reference or not. Anyway, what can we do? What are you doing? What am I doing? One thing. Let's get back to one. Just to go back for a second to Francis Bacon. Look, look how people threw out the baby with bathwater from that. Oh, there's atheism is the thing to do. And obviously science is God. And so now we have people worshiping God. Science is God. We don't have them honoring biblical values. They don't have to. We've been taught, we've part of this pendulum pushing is that, hey, you can be anything you want to be. That's what our TV commercials, I was watching a commercial the other day. It was about some drink. The people on it was just weird. These aren't real people. These are caricatures. Everything is a caricature. So we've raised a whole generation of people that, hey, caricatures is all, you can be a caricature. You don't have to be a real person. And then the rest of us have to accept this character, this act. That's what it is. It's not real. Bacon was saying, look at what's real, and don't just believe superstitious stuff. So the modern, the contemporary superstition is this idea, this crazy idea that whatever you want to think and do is your reality. Whatever my truth is my truth. Well, I'm sorry. My truth is my truth, but it may not be a universal truth. And my goal in life is not to believe what Mark wants to believe. My goal in life is to know what is actually true. And so every time I come on here, at the end, I tell you, I believe that if you want to know what is true, if that's what's most important to you, because that's what's most important to me, what is true, I believe that if you pray to God and say, please, that creator of all things, tell me what is true, show me what is true, I will deal with the pain of facing the truth, because what is important is knowing the truth and following the path of truth. If that works for you, if you're interested in doing that, take a shot at it. I believe that if you're sincere, you're going to get the truth. Amen.